But let's now go to something a bit related, right? We've spoken a lot about agency banking. Has been able to, make moves in that regard. And one thing that is synonymous to agency banking is POS terminals, right? And a couple of bodies are working together to create a feature that prevents fraud on POS terminal. These bodies are the Nigerian Electronic Fraud Forum and the Association of Mobile Money and Banking Agents in Nigeria, right? They are creating a feature, and what this feature is actually supposed to do is to flag fraudulent transactions on POS terminals, right? And not just flag those transactions, it now gives authorities the location of where those transactions happen. It sounds great, right? It sounds like fraud, as we know, right, over the years has been a big issue in Nigeria. But there are really important questions that need to be asked, and I think let's start with how big, right, is the POS fraud problem in Nigeria, Chimbebe?
Okay, so first, just occurred to me now that one of the agencies that they are using or that they are working with for this is also it kind of contribute to POS fraud.
Interesting.
Yes, please contribute to POS fraud.
Interesting.
It's not something that nobody knows. So I'll start with explaining how POS fraud works, then going to how big it is or can be. So it's, looking from the outside, it can be interesting or you can be puzzling. How does this happen, right? But one way is the classic way that banks, financial institutions have been shouting about for several years. So I give you my ATM and my PIN, and maybe a few weeks down the line, use the details I gave you to make a withdrawal from my account. It's unauthorized, but because because you have the ATM, nobody can really stop you or do anything about that. The other is when these withdrawals are done under duress. Like I mentioned, we've seen numerous cases across the country where SARS makes individuals go withdraw money from either ATM or POS terminals. The other would also be kidnappers, armed robbers. That's like a common MO. And the third, and probably the one that should have most people worried or everyone worried, is some POS terminals can clone your details. And when that happens,
that's scary.
Very scary, because whenever I think about it, I'm like, whose POS terminal should I use? Yeah, exactly. And maybe, I don't know, that's a different discussion, but yeah, it's scary. Your details can be cloned, and those details can now be, when you are not around, to carry out transactions. And as you can see, I've only mentioned one technology solution. Every other solution here there's a huge human element. But as to how big fraud can get, between Q2 2022 and Q2 2023, there were at least there was fraud cases or POS fraud cases that amounted to about 1.95 billion naira, which is a lot of money. And that's just in that period. We don't yet have the details for the entire year, in the entire 2023. So that's how big it could get. So yes,
that's big.
The desire or the move to fight POS fraud is legit, but there are still a lot of questions to be asked.
Yeah. And one of those questions is what I'll be asking him. So what are those barriers to, like, Timothy has told us the way some of these fraud cases happen, right? So what are those barriers to them saying, oh, we want to create a feature that will...
Well, like you mentioned, it's a human problem generally. So it means that even the people perpetrating this crime or these acts, even with new technologies, they are definitely going to find a way to evolve and take advantage of the system. But the good thing about this is that it's not just a particular agency that is on it. We have agencies of government working with private players.
Okay.
So we have, like you mentioned, the Nigerian Electronic Fraud Forum, which is an arm of the CBN. together within Nigerian interbank settlement systems, that's NIPS, and working together with the police, the DSS, and of course, we have AMBAN, which is the Association of Mobile Money Agents and Banking Agents of Nigeria. So we have players in the ecosystem working together, trying to find a solution. Well, one of the barriers I see, basically, because we look at the system, what they are trying to do is, one, create an additional KYC layer on how to get this thing done.
Yeah.
But then, wouldn't they start providing with the people basically at the fraudsters now start getting information from the users now? Their additional information, that in itself is a risk they are looking at. But another thing also that I realized that they're trying to also implement is with regards to providing common identifiers for banking agents, that is PoS agents and all, to terminal. So aside from the KYC feature that they're introducing to combat fraudulent transactions, they're also providing identifiers. Maybe, I don't know how that's going to be, but it could be a number to identify every agent. So Amban said they have about 1.7 million agents on their platform. I'm sure it should be more than that. So I think that is another angle we can look at, that, okay, if there was a fraudulent transaction, if there was a report, they can easily trace back to the particular agents where that fraud occurred from. So generally, it's a good one. But then there's still the fear, like you mentioned, the human elements. They'll find a way to take advantage of it. So
yeah. So just to add to that, one is the agent education. I don't know if you remember, but last year we've talked about it. They wanted to start like online courses basically for agents. I don't know how that has gone, how much progress they've made on that front, but that's going to be a lot of work, educating 1.8 million people to prevent this. But the second one would be that the major stakeholders in this do not seem to know that this is happening.
Yeah,
so major stakeholders as like the POS, let's say operators now, those who provide, the companies that provide these POS machines. A lot of them say they do not know that such a thing is happening.
Yeah.
But the problem now becomes, how do you want to implement it? Okay, yes, you could. On one hand, if you train the agents to identify it, which I think will not solve the problem anyway, but if you train agents to identify maybe markers of crime, that could be one way. But if you want to use a KYC feature, then you need my system to sort of implement that KYC feature. And if I do not know about it, I don't know how you want to do it. And yeah, that alone would say huge question mark. We've had this problem where they are not always very clear. Government agents step in, but they're not clear on strategy.
So
and it's okay. Go on.
I also, like you mentioned, I also feel that's where ecosystem players comes in. Like for instance, AMBAN, when members of AMBAN are mobile money agents, mobile money operators, and super agents and all. So if we can get these fintechs to begin to educate those on their platforms, I think it makes it easier for the agents to.
Yeah, but so that point you brought up actually ties a bit to my next question, which is, does it make sense for government authorities, right, or bodies like this, to create a feature, to create a solution, for where the how should I put it now, the ecosystem players are not exactly involved, right? Because if you look at a lot of systems or a lot of things that have been created, NIBS, for example, was as a result of banks, right, coming together and say, okay, we need these things, let's create. But in cases where you now have CBN and Co now coming together to create something for them, right, is that the best approach? Because I think they should have been involved from the beginning. What do you think?
So first, you cannot have a crucial element in a problem missing when you're thinking about a solution. If you're not, you want to build a house and you want to build it on the air, you're wasting your time. That's never going to happen. And in this case, you can't have a fraud feature implemented without having POS providers. It's impossible.
Yeah.
Because you need access to their system. So that's the first thing I would say about that. One of the biggest problems we've seen around building like coalitions to fight fraud is everybody says we need to do this, but nobody wants to put themselves forward to do it. And there are a lot of reasons. I was speaking to someone last week and she mentioned that one of the major reasons why this doesn't happen is trust. If fintech doesn't want a competitor to get access to some of their data or some information about them that could be used in business strategy.
True.
And that element of trust, I think that if the CBN is involved or NIBS or AMBAN is involved, it sort of helps with that element of trust. Would it eliminate it completely? No. But at least you know that, I mean, you're not even guaranteed because CBN may decide to go and do their own business, but to a very large extent, you know that CBN is not going to use your data to start a new business,
True.
right? So that helps to reach trust. I think a mix of industry-led and agency-led approach to fighting fraud might be the best solution as opposed to, okay, let's leave the agency to figure it out, because if the agency goes ahead, they may miss out on some things. If we leave the industry, the problem of trust may never be fixed, and we may never solve the problem of fraud.
True. That makes so much sense, right? So you wanted to add something, Emmanuel?
Yeah. So with regards to the approach, it's actually quite commendable that we have agencies of government coming in to solve the problem together with the ecosystem players, because in most climes they just put the regulation out there and watch you flout it so that you be penalized. But since it's already a national problem, people are losing a lot of money, so it's quite commendable.
Makes sense. Thank you.
To listen to the full episode of this podcast, visit podcast.techpoint.africa or search for Techpoint Africa Podcast on your favorite podcast platforms.